All right, welcome to the party. So welcome everybody. I see Space Tacos, Regine, Flakinator. We got Shannon, Brenda, Shango, GRC Mafia. We got the Pain. Let's see. Let me go ahead and drop this. All right, Rhonda. I hope everybody's doing well tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and go through our introduction, and then we'll go ahead and move over to the presentation. So we have Dwight with us, who's going to be talking about like the IAPP and a couple of the different like privacy-related certs that he ended up passing pretty quickly, to be honest with you. He's got a whole really nice slide deck to go through. So just as like an introduction, so we have like this general agenda just to kind of sort of keep us on track. The last couple of weeks, if you've been with us, I'm sure you noticed that we kind of went off of that, with a 4-hour stream and so forth. So we do try to keep it around 2 hours, roughly, give or take, but we just kind of play it by ear. So if we have a presentation, that's usually about the first half hour, give or take. And then we move into like a weekly topic review or discussion, group activity, open discussion. And we just kind of, it's all loose. We kind of play it by ear, but just to kind of keep us on track a little bit. Our monthly goals, which is something I added on the slide recently. So we are looking at like booking speakers for the first 2 weeks of the month. We'll have open discussions in the middle of the month, and then we'll have our job readiness and group resume review at the last Thursday of every month. All right, and then moving forward, so after the presentation, so drop your questions and anything else that you guys have in chat, and I'll go ahead and try to mark those throughout the presentation itself. After the presentation is over, then I'm going to drop the link for the stage itself. And I want everybody to feel comfortable coming up. You can turn on your video if you'd like. You don't have to use video, but I want everybody to feel comfortable to come up on stage, join the conversation, talk directly. That's really what makes it a really collaborative environment. And this is a great space for everybody, no matter where you're at. So it is a business casual meeting. It is recorded and live streamed. Definitely want you guys to feel comfortable with the mic and video, of course, ask questions, even if it doesn't pertain to what we're speaking about at that time. Worst case scenario, we'll come back around to it or just mention it later on if we skip over it somehow. On Discord, I'll go ahead and drop that in chat too. You can go through and drop your personal LinkedIn profile, so that way we could start networking a little bit deeper and so forth and follow each other. And share your resources. Don't share anything you don't want to be public. If you happen to, just reach out to me, let me know. You can also email me at that contact@studygrc.org, and we'll get that taken care of. All right, and then we also have our website, so studygrc.org, where you can find the rest of our socials. And on Tuesdays, we now have this privacy stream. So Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Central, we're doing the privacy stream for different discussions and topics around the privacy realm. And now with that part said, let's go ahead and transition over here. So here's Dwight. Thank you very much for joining us and presenting. You're usually in the chat side, and I'm looking forward to this presentation. So again, thank you everybody for hopping in. I will be in chat, and let's see what he's got for us.
All right, what's up, everybody? Happy to be presenting today talking about privacy. I think it is one of these peripheral GRC topics that is going to just keep coming back up. So I'm excited to address it today and kind of get into the nitty gritty a little bit with y'all, but also maybe introduce it to some folks who might be wondering what all this stuff is about. Why is it so important that we have like a whole separate stream for it and all of that? So thanks for joining. Throw some questions in the chat if you've got them, and I'll try to move through these slides as quickly as I can. All right. Chris, you're gonna have to help me out with your slides. I do not have control. There we go. All right. For starters, I believe privacy is a fundamental human right. It is not necessarily the case that everybody believes that. It's still a little bit contentious here in the US, but I believe it's a fundamental human right. It's often aligned with the right to just be left alone, the right to be anonymous, and the right to maintain your seclusion. So when we talk about it in the business context, it does have to do with individuals and how they're able to control their information who has access to that information, what they've actually consented to and have allowed you to do with that information, and then what is the and for what purposes. Usually it has to be for a specific purpose. So I bring that up just to start out with the definition to say that as GRC folks, it is something that comes up a lot. And as you advance in your career, we do have to start talking about these hairy problems. Like what is this big issue that you're going to take on in career? What are you going to be the sort of SME at? What are you going to be an expert at? How are you going to differentiate yourself in the job market, and find something that you're excited to come to work and talk about, and it's challenging enough that really keeps you motivated. So having that hairy problem, I felt like privacy was pretty apt for that in terms of what I understood about it, and so I kept digging deeper and deeper and finding more and more about it. And that's how I ended up here. Also, it is just one of these things, like you're always going to come back to this idea of trust. So if you're able to show how, from a privacy or compliance perspective, even similar to a security perspective, as if when we know that our customers can trust us, they're going to, of course, be more willing to give information, of course, be more willing to spend more dollars with us. So if you listen to that and you're like, duh, privacy and GRC go together, this might be something that you might want to dig into a little bit further. You're also going to find in a lot of job descriptions and things, or duties of a privacy analyst, that risk management, awareness training, a lot of these issues that we deal with as security analysts in GRC, they also carry over to privacy a bit as well. And I like to think of it as having more of like a microscope. Instead of it being a whole other different issue, I'm looking at what we're doing on the security end with a microscope to see how we're handling people's personal information. This also might be a good fit for you if you don't mind dealing with these regulations, if you don't mind getting granular with what is actually happening with them, what all the details, looking through big documents. These are things you have to do anyway, but in a way that also takes on the responsibilities that you have to protect when it comes to people's rights. If you work for a company that covers several states, or a region of a group of states, or if you're working for a global company, I think this is something to keep in mind, even maybe for potential roles in your existing company. And if you're working in finance, if you're at a publicly traded company, if you're working in healthcare, all these companies that deal with this sensitive information, sometimes you might be working for like a data broker or something that really privacy is going to be a big issue all the time. Or you're working for a legal firm, like legal tech is a big field, and they need folks that know what they're doing as well. Finally, I'll just say that as these regulations get more and more complex, they're adding more things to them, and they're kind of bringing the field together. So we do see regulations where you have both a privacy and a cybersecurity requirement, and so they're kind of being merged anyway. So if you're thinking about the future of your career, I would encourage you to start thinking about privacy a little bit before it's put on your plate. Then I encourage you to look at it now instead of later. So to talk about privacy a little bit more in detail, like for me, again, I said I think of it as a magnifying glass, but I think if you start to get a little bit more deeper, we are talking about the processing of data, and that is a little bit different responsibility than what you have in cybersecurity. So you do have some responsibilities to the individuals that give you their information, and how you deal with that has an impact on the organization as a whole. So these are some clips from the NIST 850 that we talked about recently, that talks all about cybersecurity training, privacy training, building this culture of security and privacy in your companies. And I think that Venn diagram is a little misleading. I think that middle section is a little bit bigger than they sort of let on here, but it is important to have an idea how they relate and then maybe where they sort of start to depart. And so, to give you an idea, that what I would encourage you to think about is what happens when, let's say, we work for this important social media company. You can pick one, and people love to give us their information. Maybe they give us too much information. We just have that much trust with them. But now we figured out a way that we're gonna have some new app, some new feature where we're going to collect more information. Maybe we want to add to our website. We want to add a dating section. We're going to let people find their spouse, right? But we need to collect more data from them. And so you, as a privacy professional, or if you're doing what I call like value mill GRC, where you're in a GRC role, but you're also, it's such a small company, or you have so many responsibilities that maybe you get some privacy responsibilities pushed on you. You also have to consider what are the repercussions for us launching this new product, for us introducing this new feature that's going to be processing people's data. So here are the FIPS principles. Sometimes you see these, you see the GAP principles. There are all these considerations that we might not necessarily see in our frameworks with cybersecurity, but they really kind of lay the groundwork for privacy. So limiting collection of information, thinking about what is the purpose of that information, how is it used, and are we being transparent about that? And you see the security safeguards is a component of that as well. So I'm sure in the privacy stream, our Tuesday videos, we'll be talking about these in more detail, but this is to kind of give you an idea of what you'll be considering as in a sort of privacy role, or even an expanded GRC role. There are frameworks, there are guidelines. So we're not doing this blindly. We do have the NIST privacy framework to give us an idea of how to put together a privacy program. And we even see, I was talking about convergence earlier, we even see where, for example, 853 in the original revision 4, privacy was kind of this addendum kind of way at the back where you had to go check, some of the last pages to really see what were those controls. Well, now it has really been integrated into revision 5, and when you look in there, you still see that, okay, those security control baselines are they don't fit into the baselines because there are some other considerations that that I was talking about. For example, how we consider data processing that aren't necessarily cybersecurity concerns. So there's a lot of guidance on it. There is that personal information family that I'm sure we'll be discussing with PBO and crew soon. But yeah, there are guidelines to consider and dig a little bit deeper, and even talking about the sensitivity of data. If we're dealing with military data, if we're dealing with biometric data, if we're dealing with something very sensitive, what are the levels of controls that we're going to be putting in place? So some things that a privacy analyst might be doing, again, some of them might sound familiar. When I asked you to consider whether or not a new application to your social network was going to create issues for people's rights, for their privacy, that is often what we have to do in a privacy assessment, or sometimes privacy impact assessment. These are a whole flavor of risk assessments that we do in particular for privacy. So yeah, you see on privacy impact assessment, you might see data protection impact assessment. They have a bunch of different flavors, even specifically some for GDPR, where we talk about a legitimate interest assessment, whether we actually have a legitimate interest to be processing people's data. So if you have those skills for risk assessment, if you know that, okay, this particular processing issue is such a big concern that maybe it also needs to appear in my risk registry as a real danger to the business. If you know you need to connect it there, if you know from the privacy end, you might need to connect it with your privacy policy. Like, oh, if we're going to collect that information, we need to update our privacy policy, our terms of service, and let people know what exactly we're doing. These are going to be some common roles. I've even seen job descriptions where your whole job is only doing privacy impact assessment. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but if you're really nerdy about this stuff, this could be really important to your job. You're going to be dealing with a lot of policy development, same way you would be in your GRC roles, compliance monitoring, where you're doing. I feel like this is a little bit different from GRC. In GRC, we kind of have to know about the new laws where when they come out. Where in privacy, you're actually considering them sometimes even when they're in draft. So maybe for folks who follow like CMMC or something, where you see this sort of draft rule come out and there's a public discussion about it. Maybe you're a little bit familiar with that, but I would say most of us trying to get into GRC, or most of us in our early GRC roles, you might haven't had the chance to really deal with those sort of issues just yet. Where in privacy, you might need to be tracking it from the beginning, like, oh, it's just a draft at the moment, but this might really impact our business. What are we going to do about it? Who do we need to talk to? You have to start pretty early on, and typically you might even have a whole legal team that's tracking that and asking questions about it pretty early on. That in particular is the case with our state privacy laws in the U.S. Data subject rights is also a departure from GRC. It is where as you collect people's data, you have to give them access to that data. You might have to give them access to view that data. You might have to give them access to correct that data, to restrict how you use it, to make sure that you're not selling it, or to even be able to request that their data is deleted. Now, this is important for us to know personally, so that we can go back to companies and say, hey, give me my data back. But it's also important if you're considering a privacy role where you have to reply to people's requests. A lot of times, especially for like GDPR, you only have a certain time window that you have to reply to people's requests and give them that data so that they can take it to another company, or they can remove it completely. Training and awareness is going to come up as a big issue all the time. Just really, I think it's a important one as a touch point for speaking to your teams, your companies, talking to your product team, even your IT and security teams about how we handle people's data. So that one's going to come up and have definitely be a corollary to what we see in security. And I think another big bridge is how we deal with vendors. So a lot of those early GRC roles you might see them focusing in on third-party risk management, where sometimes your whole role might just be looking at questionnaires or sending them out, or maybe even receiving them, working with the team that's deciding whether or not to bring on a new tool or not. And in the same way, the privacy person might also have some of those responsibilities, especially if you have a tool. And of course, in the age of AI, that is going to be processing the data that people have giving your company. You're going to want to know, how is the vendor using it? What are they going to do with it? Are all of the categories of personal information that they're using really necessary for what they need to do? And then also that's when we're coming in, and I think especially privacy analysts with that security background, we're also looking at like, well, how secure is that organization? Do they have a culture of security there? Do they have some sort of attestation from SOC 2, ISO, or someone that makes them reputable? And with that said, I'll kind of talk a little bit about the IAPP and what they do. They are the largest organization of privacy professionals. This is where we get our certifications. This is where you see a lot of conferences and webinars and things really happening in the privacy field. As a warning, I will say it is very legal related. You see a lot of privacy lawyers that are often the ones who are the sort of loudest voices about privacy. But that is changing. It is getting more diverse, and we're also seeing a lot of even certifications that are specifically for people who might be in the risk management. So you see the CIPM there, which is the privacy manager role. This is the first certification that I got. When I looked at the requirements, and I'll pop them on the screen in a moment. When I looked at the requirements for the exam, I saw that there was a lot of overlap there between exams that I had taken and passed and what I knew about risk management in my experience. So I targeted that one first, and then when I took that test, passed, got some confidence, I also turned to the CIPP, and that has a couple of different versions. It has a US version, a Europe version. They have a version for China as well, and maybe one or two other versions. But I had a hard time deciding if I wanted to focus in on Europe or the US, and I started to look at the materials available and really went for the US instead, especially when I knew there were other people in the group. I found out that Chris was studying for the CIPP US as well, and I really started to get into the Discord and ask questions and see if we could study together. I will also mention that they have added the AI certification, and that's one I'm interested in the future. But I just want to, just to point out how I was choosing those. Like I was looking at, okay, how am I? Is this a topic I'm really interested in? Is it difficult? Is it a heavy lift? I like to find, like, I don't want to take all the tests that a certification program offers. Like, I don't want to do all the CompTIA stuff. I want to go for the most difficult exam, and that sounds a little bit masochistic and crazy, but I think it also gives you, like, if you really want to advance your career, you really want to have an idea like what all exists in the field. That's a good way to think about it. I think PBO, we talk about lifting heavy. So if you hear us talking about the CISSP and these other tests, I like to point to them because I think compared to the privacy tests, and again, all tests are difficult, but I really feel like the security tests, tests like the CISSP, they're at such a intense level that when you go back to these privacy certifications, that you almost feel like a little bit relieved. That's definitely been my experience. How employable are you with those certifications? Of course, a certification alone is not going to get you employed, but how does it look for in that particular field? And I found that these certifications for privacy roles in particular, and privacy can be just as crowded and competitive as cybersecurity. So it's not a cure-all, but they're really important. And a lot of times you see people that have multiple certifications. And then finally, how freely available is the info? And that is something I considered with both the CIPM and the CIPP US. I also wanted to give you guys an idea like what those requirements actually look like. So these are the main topics. Like on the IAPP website, they have a body of knowledge. When you go to study for the exam, it gives you like a breakdown of a range of how many questions are going to be in a particular category. And so you have a look here. If you see in the middle, that middle row is the CIPM. And so I went and started looking at that, and I said, oh, this is basically testing you on the importance of privacy, how to set up a privacy program, and then they have the life cycle of privacy from starting out, like assessing data. That's really similar to what we do on the security end when we talk about like, oh, if you don't know what assets you have, how can you protect them? It's a similar situation in privacy. So I started there because it is a manager test. I felt like some of the feedback I got, people felt a little funny, like, hey, why are you taking the manager test first? But so I kind of did it probably backwards from what other people would do, and then I went to the CIPP US, and I feel like the toughest part is probably the last section in that first row that you see the state privacy laws, because they're always in flux. They're making additions to them. They're making changes to them. Being able to answer questions about them can be a little bit nerve wracking. So I will tell you guys, get into the group, find a community, discuss this with people. Don't just try to, you're not going to make it just memorizing state laws on that particular section of the test. After getting on here and really almost feeling like I didn't know anything, and talking to Chris, talking to PBO, talking to everybody that jumped on a call to talk privacy stuff, I ended up getting 100% on the state privacy law section of that particular exam. So not easy to do, and I think that's definitely something to think about. Okay, the last column is for the privacy technologists. So just to give you an idea, if you have some sort of engineering background, if you're really interested in how the product process, how these products deal with data and how to protect that data, I think that might be a good exam to consider as well. And they're all expensive. So just to point out here, this is that top row is the cost of the exam. The middle is the membership. And then once you're a member, you can take the exams for a little bit of a discount. So when I looked at that compared to trying to have an ISACA certification and a CompTIA certification and hop between all of those, plus my interest in privacy, I decided okay, this would be a worthwhile investment for me. And so I took my first exam, and then probably 2 months after I passed the CIPM, I went ahead and took the CIPP US. So you definitely need to invest about $1,000, I would say, into that. That's not including all the books and materials and stuff. So I would say both of the exams that I took, there were affordable resources in them, and that helped me keep the cost low. But I want, again, in the interest of transparency, I know we talk on and on about certifications, if they're worth it, how expensive they are. But yeah, just to give you an idea, those from the jump. And you do not have to, of course, you do not have to take the exams to really sort of start looking into these a little bit more closely. But I did want to point this out, and feel free to, ping me and ask more questions, especially if you're interested in that last one, because I think in the new year, that's going to be one that I start to look at a little bit more closely. All right, that's privacy in a nutshell. That's a little bit about how I got interested in privacy, why I think it's so important. Even in the news today, we're seeing things about how people's privacy rights are being violated, and it's causing all these issues. So I'm excited to discuss this stuff with you, answer your questions, and maybe get a couple other folks interested in privacy roles, and those certifications. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dwight. Great job. A lot of really good information there. Bam. I'm dropping this link again. So if anybody wants to come up on stage, hopefully you guys can hear me. You guys should be able to hear me. You can hear me, right, Dwight?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. So if anybody else has any questions, go ahead and drop that in chat, or there's the link for the stage as well. So there was a couple things. So one of the very first ones was on the slide here about the no pants portion. People wanted answers. Is that, did you notice that, or was that on purpose for the without privacy thing?
This is actually a sticker from the IAPP. They came up with all these fun stickers. I used a couple of them in the presentation, and I think I just loved it because, I actually had an interview where I was challenged a little bit. I was interviewing for a security role, and they asked me "Oh, are you? We see this privacy certifications. Are you more interested in privacy than security?" And I said, "Well, right now I'm really interested because I'm studying for the certification. I'm trying to improve my knowledge." And I think it actually ended up being a kind of knock against me. So I just like to see that it was articulated pretty clearly here with this image. Like, okay, you can have security, but if you don't have privacy, you don't really have much.
And yeah, that's a great explanation there. Yeah, a lot of information in a short presentation, to be honest with you. Great job. You described a lot of that very, very well.
Thanks.
I think that's one reason we don't have so many questions, to be honest, is because you explained it so well throughout. One of the different things, so I see PBO, and we also got Space Tacos hopping on here. So Yomi on LinkedIn, I would recommend to hop over to the YouTube side or otherwise, because the LinkedIn like chat is just really bad. It doesn't work half the time. Just a heads up. All right, and then I see PBO drop something here.
Yeah, I'm trying to catch up with the chat. I didn't look at it while I was talking, so sorry
Oh
if
no,
I
you're
missed.
fine. I was following it. There's also this right here from Space Taco. So how long did it take you to study?
I I did not measure. Uh, I did not measure it pretty closely, but I would say when I left the CIPM exam, I used the entire time for the exam. I checked over all my answers, and when I passed, I felt confident enough. Like, oh, okay, I think I'm going coming back to do it. I know, and I had already checked the other certifications. I already knew that I would get a discount on it and things like that. It's like, okay, if you're paying this much for the membership, I want to get the value out of it. And while I had time, it was a time when I had to study. So I would say it was a total it was about over a period of 2 months um, that I studied. How many hours that is, I'm not sure. I think I put in the presentation a minimum of 30 hours. I probably spent more time than that on it, but there were also things in there that I felt confident about already. I felt confident in my knowledge of HIPAA, for example, because I had some experience dealing with that already. So, um, yeah, I feel like I
It's really hard to tell.
yeah, really hard to like narrow in on a time, but they recommend no less than 30 hours.
Yeah, and that's for like each one of them. Yeah, and then there's also this question here from Shango. So, does IAPP have a privacy course related to PCI? I do not believe so at all. I have not seen one.
No, no, and I think they would consider, the existing certifications related to how you're handling data in the U.S., EU. I think they would consider that to fall. They would fall PCI underneath that. If you have one of those certifications, you should be able to deal with privacy issues related to credit card processing.
Yeah, and like the way I look at it too is that like the PCI pulls from IAPP for their privacy portions is kind of like what I would be thinking. They're going to be looking at that at IAPP on what their recommendations are for the framework, rather than the other way around would be my thought. And then also, did you have another question there, Space Tacos? Welcome to the party, pal. There's also, I was trying to look for it again. Flakinator mentioned when you were talking about the certs too that you can also overcert. I thought that would be an interesting topic. Let me go ahead and pull this up.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I don't know. I feel like there's only like you do have to do other things. You do have to connect it. You're trying to do a lot of things, but if you have 4 or 5 things behind your name, it's great. But if you're really early on trying to just prove you have this knowledge, I think it's a great way. It's kind of hard to overcert if you're pretty early on in your career. Anyway, they're so expensive. The prices of them are gonna limit you on go ODing on certs anyway.
Well, I think when you get a little up in the game, a lot of times the companies you work for pay for them. A lot of times, because they're trying to make you stay. So every time you get one, you got to stay like an extra year if they pay for it. So depending on your company, I know a lot of companies will pay for a service. I think the company I work for would pay for service. I got a
Yeah, but
question
they
for I got a question for Dwight.
go for it, sir.
What you didn't touch on is what's your thoughts on the states? It seems like each state now has their own privacy. Colorado's big, New York DFR, CCPA,
Man, that
and
is a question of the day.
yeah, what's your
And I
thoughts on
think
that?
I just hear job security because again, it's so complex
That's complex.
because and it's getting more complex as new states introduce their laws. Some of them are just some of the ones that are passed this past year are
Mm-hmm.
just coming into effect in 2025. So,
Mm-hmm.
and with this new administration coming in, most privacy professionals do not expect to have a comprehensive national law on
Mm-hmm.
privacy. So that means states are going to be pressured to really do something about their privacy concerns. And so this for, applies to everything from regulating big tech all the way over to women's health and how uh, even something like a period app tracks, you know, um,
Yeah.
women's information and whether that is shared or not, whether people have access to it. And so as we start, as it starts to get more and more complex, people that are willing to dig into the laws um,
Yeah.
and figure out what their company has some issues with and how to fix them, I think they're going to be at an advantage because it's. I mean, even in other places that do have a comprehensive law for Europe, for example, where we see the EU has a GDPR. Well, it's not the case that if you know the GDPR, you're done, right? We see all these other
Uh,
regulations. We see the AI Act and everything that it requires. So, I think complexity is sort of something, and so I was talking about hairy problems because you can't be afraid of big problems to be in this field. But that's I feel like that's the case of all GRC really.
yeah. The thing too is, I used to work for a bigger company, and they did international work. So we were looking at GDPR. Mexico's got their own thing. Brazil got their own thing. So trying to navigate there, and you brought up a good point. I was working a lot with legal because some GDPR has a lot of legal things, but then they start asking me questions like breach notification. That's really not a legal question, right? That's kind of like, what do we want to do as a security team? So it was just kind of interesting working with legal and kind of what parts was legal and what parts were cybersecurity. Because I'm in a meeting, they're looking at me. I'm like, "Y'all legal? What y'all asking me for?" I'm like, "That's a cyber question, not a legal question." So trying to find that balance, I think, as you as a person kind of can, I guess, play in both of those worlds, of course, will make you more valuable. Once again, great presentation again.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
did a good job on that.
I think it's going to be, ready or not, it's just going to get more and more importanter, as Space Taco said.
Now, true is, and you
Yeah.
brought this up, is I'm kind of a senior person, and we get a lot of privacy stuff now. So I used to work with the CISO. I'm like, okay, this is a privacy. How do you want to handle it as a company, right? Because some of that stuff is like, okay, that's GDPR, CCPA, New York. They have conflicting things. So what we gonna do? What's as an organization? How are we gonna handle it? So, he's talking about data sovereignty, where if we got data here, then we got to do this. If data there, we got to do that. I'm like, man, that's crazy, man. Like I said, it starts to get super complex.
It gets complex. I think some of the responses that you see, they have what they call rationalizing, where basically the company chooses
Mhm.
whatever the strictest law is. So they
Yeah.
look at the price to comply with everything, and then they're
Hmm.
like, "Oh, uh, GDPR is pretty comprehensive. Like if it's a global organization, GDPR is pretty comprehensive. We're going to comply with that."
Hmm.
And I feel like that's how a lot of them deal with it.
We do that in
Or
cybersecurity.
CCPA.
Yep, yep. So we do that in cybersecurity. So we doing NIST, HIPAA, CJIS. So they're like, whatever's the highest one, pick them. But it's just not one framework. You got to look at each one and compare them. So it really gets crazy. I did that on a spreadsheet, and it was a nightmare. It's like, okay, this
And the
passed
breach
for
breach
this.
notification.
Yeah.
is a major problem because what is considered sensitive data in one state is not the same as in other states, and sometimes your requirements, like if you have to let the press know, if you need to notify if that state has a particular agency or the attorney general that you need to notify, like all that could be different across all the states,
Actually,
and
I wrote.
every state has a law.
Yeah, actually, I was writing a program to do that. So in the breach notification, we would go through the database and you would see what state your customers in. And each breach notification is like 500 or 1,000. So once you figure out how many of your customers in there, and you can figure out, okay, if we get breached and it's everything, we got to notify this, that, and that. So then what we did at the top, we go 24 hours. We're going to notify the AG on 500. So we just took the narrowest thing, even if it didn't apply. Meaning they wanted 1,000, but we're going to notify 500 because that's, for us, that was the tightest one compared to everything. So that's kind of how we start going through it and kind of keeping track of it. So you as a GRC, as a privacy person, got to figure out, okay, we really doing it in spreadsheets. Once again, okay, where our customers at? What's the breach notification for that particular state? Then here we go. So if you got breaches, break the glass, you should be able to hit a button and just notify all the AGs and stuff. Because if you look at Archer, they have breach notification modules to help you do that. So
one of my questions. I'm sorry. I was going to ask. So, do you implement that on your incident response plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was curious if you would put that directly in the incident response or not.
Yeah, we do it at a high level. Breach notification per state. Then we start trying to track it. Okay, where's our data at in each state? Right. So you got to go through your data and say, okay, this is how many people we got in Indiana. This is how many people. So does the number of customers or constituents in your database meets the breach notification? You get breached, and you only got 10 people, you don't have to notify, right? You don't want to over notify. So that's why you got to kind of dig in your database. So we're like, okay, we need to run that quarterly so we can figure out what states we need to do a breach notification from. Then he brought up a good point. Sometimes you got to let the AG know. Sometimes, Indiana, you got to let our information and technology know. So it's not all the time it's AG. Each state is different, which is crazy. So, but just trying to get a handle on that. And two, is part of your third-party risk assessment. Those are things you need to figure out for your third-party risk, who you need to know, who you need to let know in a notification. Go ahead, Dwight. You was pausing on that.
I was going to answer real quick. I saw Space Tacos ask why I was considering the European exam versus the US. I feel like the GDPR is still the standard bearer in terms of comprehensive privacy legislation, and so because of that, a lot of laws are modeled after it. So I feel like if you can master that, it is a real great foundation for other laws, but it might not necessarily be as applicable to roles that you might see early on in your career, unless you're have enough GRC experience that you can angle for some compliance or privacy roles at some of the bigger companies. So I felt like the US would be more applicable. And also, I looked at how much the books were, and the US books were cheaper. So I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna, this is the, in particular, I was looking at the Mike Chappell resources. So Mike Chappell, who I already had his book for the CISSP. Yeah. He also had books for CIPM and the CIPP US. So it made me feel comfortable with the study materials. Chris has them, and Chris actually scared me because he also has membership to Privacy Bootcamp, another platform that is probably great for making sure you really know the stuff and know it with a lot of detail. But when he put those questions up on the screen and answered those, I was like, I was failing the test. And so I went from like, I'm going to take this test next week to, oh, maybe I should hold off for
yeah, you still passed.
Yeah. So I think the materials you have access to can also influence your confidence. So that's why it's good to do it in community, because I'm like, hey, let's take the test sooner, and Chris is like, I don't feel ready for it, but it was just because we had different study materials.
Yeah, it's like an infinite hallway, Fleckinator.
Yeah,
What?
real quick.
So
Go ahead, Chris.
yeah, go.
Oh, real
No, go
quick
ahead.
is, and I'm gonna push back on a little Dwight is. I think a GDPR like 853. Let's go big, man. That's the 800 pound. If you can do that, the rest of them will fall in line. But GDPR is a monster though, because we were doing a little bit of that work. It is a monster. So I put that at the level of 853. Go big or go home. So I'm kind of go ahead, Chris.
Yeah.
Chris is over there twinging a little bit. He ain't like what I said.
I don't know. The EU ain't got that much time and money in compared to U.S. federal systems.
Yeah, but GDPR compared to CCPA, which is modeled after that,
yeah,
it's probably 20% harder, man. When we were looking at it, it was crazy. It was like, oh my God.
So,
and we have a lot of data controllers in the United States, and that's probably why.
The weird thing though is now you look at a lot of RFPs, they use GDPR language, like the controller, the that type of language.
process.
Process. That's in all the RFPs now. So obviously, and CCPA is based on it. And sometimes I push back. I'm like, dude, this ain't. Why are we using GDPR language in the United States? Everybody's just so used to it. I think they just went big, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, and I think that would be kind of interesting to look a little bit further. I don't know. I don't know if that's fair to say with the 853 in GDPR, but
I'm saying
two of my questions. Two of my questions was, do you plan on taking the EU one later on? And then also, like, one of the reasons I was looking at, so I looked at the EU one as well, but to be honest with you, it looks significantly more difficult because they have so much extra. So.
Yeah, there's, we talked about this a little bit with the government system. So you also need to be able to understand the setup, how laws are passed, the whole process of that. You need to be able to understand. That's a component of the test as well. And so there was definitely some more familiarity with the US one. But if I was in a role that was willing to pay for it, I would definitely be up for the challenge and try to get more of those certifications. I was also interested in one for Asia. I would love to work for a global company, or be able to. I spent a lot of time in Asia in the past, so I think that global perspective is also why I was interested in the EU. But being able to travel and work abroad is also interesting to me. Just maybe not where I am just yet in my career.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking too, is, get the company to pay for it, and ideally get into a spot where, it is a global side. That's kind of what my thought process was too. So it's kind of interesting to hear that. Did any of you guys want to go ahead and touch on this one from Shane? Flakernator did put this response in. So Shane was asking about GRC boot camps, or would you like me to go over it?
That's go ahead. That's a you.
All right, so I'll go ahead and cover that real quick. So be extremely careful with boot camps. There are way more people out there training than working in the industry. And on top of that, a lot of these companies will charge you a lot of money for that. So like Space Tacos dropped in chat, simplycyber.io. There's an amazing GRC masterclass through there, which is a really good introduction. The course itself is $150. I don't know if there's a discount right this moment, but you can also get that through TCM Sec as well, which I can get the link for in a moment, which gives you full access to that course. And it's $30 a month. You just don't have lifetime access. But you do have to be extremely cautious. So some of the different highlights there would be if they guarantee you any type of six-figure job, it's a scam. If they guarantee you a position and everything else, and they want to charge you money for something, it's a scam. There's a lot of different red flags that you could look for. One of the best things to do is do exactly what you're doing, which is asking the community for an opinion. So yeah, that's another great thing to do with the Discord. So I'm going to drop that in chat too. So whenever you come across something that you're not too sure about, drop that in Discord, and the community will be like, oh yeah, this looks great, or yeah, no, stay away from that. Leverage the community big time. Way too many people have been completely scammed and lost a lot of money.
I do have a story about boot camps.
Go.
Or who is it, Shane?
Space tacos.
Yes, first of all, Dwight, thanks, man. That was awesome. Yay.
You're welcome.
Shane, I did sign up for a boot camp. It was for web development, full stack JavaScript web development. And it was a complete scam. The only thing I can say in my personal defense is I didn't think I was going to get a 6-figure job in like the 8 months that they promised. I really just signed up because I thought the teachers were a lot of fun. And they seemed like they would make the content easier to learn if they made it fun instead of just boring standing at the board, blah, blah, blah. So that's why I joined, but it started out okay the first maybe month and a half-ish. And then it all just went sideways and there was a lawsuit and it was bad. So I recommend do the free stuff first when you can find it. And I also recommend if you really want GRC, just do Jeremy's course because it's awesome and it's awesome. That's all.
Yeah. And I also want to, I just want to add really quick too that even the free stuff you got to be careful with as well, because a lot of these boot camps will give you a little bit of free just to try to coerce you into something bigger. So just be careful out there. There's way too many out there.
To clarify my free statement, not necessarily boot camps, just, free stuff. But yes, what he just said, yes to that. Sorry for that.
There's a lot out there. Go ahead. You're loud and clear.
So the reason I jumped in is because I actually did a boot camp 2 years ago, maybe 3. It was through a company, also via University of Pennsylvania. It was about $10,000. Honestly, I wasn't super impressed with it. I mean, some of it might be because I have so much IT experience, like the Linux stuff and Wireshark. Like I got hands-on with some of the tools, but I feel like I knew a lot of it already anyway, and I breezed through it. They had some CTFs, which I kind of ripped through pretty quickly as well. So honestly, at least for me, I don't know if it was worth it. For others in the class, I think it probably did help them, but when you think about it, it was like $10,000, and it was, I can't remember, was it 6 months or 9 months? I don't know if it's something's really worth that cost, depending on where you want to go. And this was also before I knew where I wanted to go, before I knew about GRC and everything. It was more of maybe like SOC analyst or something, which I definitely don't want to do. So I think like a lot of other people, you have to really watch it and see, because I know there was another group I was part of that I actually walked away from because I realized there were some very inappropriate things going on, things that were just like red flags bouncing up all over the place. And I finally had a couple that I was like, all right, I can't even ignore these. Like, I'm sorry now. And I actually pulled out and walked away from it. But the thing from the masterclass from Gerald is really good. I also found, and I did mention in here, I think it's like Sela. I don't know how to pronounce it. I found he was really good. He did a 6-parter on like risk registers and stuff, and even had stuff if you have Notion for Notion. Like I thought that was really good. That was free as well. PBI does.
If you want to drop that in the private chat here, I could put it in the channels. So in the bottom left-hand corner. So drop it there and I could move it over. So we can drop that to everybody.
One of the things I didn't really get to mention is some of the privacy resources. Like in addition to IAPP, in addition to Chris and me on Tuesdays, there are some great podcasts. There are some privacy tools in the same way we see Archer and Splunk and stuff on the security side. You see Osano, DataGrail, OneTrust, these tools that you have often specifically for privacy compliance issues. And so the big ones, security.ai, as well as OneTrust, they do have some free coursework that you could even start going through without having to pay for anything, and starting to see how they handle some of those issues, which means that you have to know those issues as well. So like the way that they set up their impact assessment was, or why, for example, the GDPR regulation or something. So I think those might be some good starting points, and we'll probably be talking about some of those resources a little bit more.
Yeah, and I dropped that link to that YouTube channel as well for Cybersecurity. I won't be able to pronounce that off the bat, but yeah, definitely some good call outs there too. One of the things I did want to go back to real quick.
You first, Chris.
Yeah, just really quick. I forget who it was, did ask about IAPP and mapping to like PCI. I wouldn't say that IAPP has any frameworks really. They really just have the education part. News, they really like form what you should have, not really a framework though. It's more of like all the concepts and skill, and primarily the certification. But they do a lot more. I'll drop their link in there. But yeah, go ahead, Fleckinator.
Well, I know Dwight mentioned podcasts and stuff, and I can't remember how long ago it was, Chris, right? But I dropped the list of all the different podcasts I listen to, well, that are security related, not non-security related ones. I'm assuming it's still in there. I could always re-drop it because I know I pulled a few out, put some more in, and mixed some stuff up because I felt some of them weren't amazing anymore, and I added a couple others. But you can't go wrong with podcasts. I mean, I know there's a GRC one I listen to that's, I think, once a week, maybe once a month. I can't remember. It helps to listen to them. And like, I know I removed the CISO series for mine only because I show up to the daily brief and Gerald goes through them. So I didn't see the point of listening to it twice. But a lot of them, some of them will repeat the information over and over again, but it also doesn't hurt just to hear it over and over, just from a learning standpoint.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and there's so much out there, like, I don't really think, especially if you have a couple certifications or something, like going off and spending thousands of dollars on, a boot camp is not going to be very beneficial, in my opinion. So, yeah, there's so much free out there. And then I did go ahead and mark that. So it's pinned in our general chat on Discord. So I went ahead and just mentioned that in the Discord if you guys wanted to check that out.
Hey, Chris, I got one for Flick. Well, I want to piggyback off of Flickinator.
Yep.
I like to go ahead and listen to the podcast. You do make a good point about not listening to it twice. My problem is I listen to it first so I know the actual story, and I try to come up with my own assessment, even though I am not 20 years of experience Gerald Ozier. And I like to listen to him later to see if I was headed on the right track, or if I have wandered my happy little self off into the weeds talking about God knows what. So I do that. But the other bonus of going to the CISO series podcast is each little blurb has a link to the OG article. And what that does is you end up getting links for Bleeping Computer. Now you have their website. You get a link for The Verge or any other of the websites that they do. And now, especially for people like Shannon J in the chat asking, how can I start staying on top of things? Build a collection of news websites that you go to, the podcasts, all of those things. And the CISO series just offers you 5 days a week. They might be repetitive websites, but you'll still build a collection of, I can go to this one, I can go to this one, I can go to that one. One of my favorites is the Hacker News, partially just because it's purple, but it also has a lot of great information. But it's a good way to build a collection. And that's the thing, is build a collection so you're always consuming the news, you're always on top of it. The bonus part is if you're new, like I am, you start to hear these words over and over and over again, and you can, I don't know that one, let me write that one down. Or, you can get familiarized with the lingo, and it helps put the concepts together. And then when Jerry puts his own little twist on it with his little 80s references and all the other nonsense he talks about, it makes things make a lot more sense, especially for my brain. So that's all.
And I know, like Bleeping Computer is great. I've been checking their stuff and doing stuff with them for probably 10 years or however, a long time, even when I was doing desktop support stuff. There's also, besides just podcasts and stuff, don't forget as well, like, I think I subscribe to Bleeping Computer's RSS feed. So don't forget about like stuff like RSS feeds, because there's security ones of those that can just show up as well on your phone, and reading and everything too. You know, not all listening. And then it also helps if you listen to it faster than 1 times if you can. I usually do 1.5 myself. YouTube is 2 times for me, but
yes, YouTube and
podcasts are 1 time.
Is fun. If you want comedy, I recommend Jerry on 2-Speed, because my God, that's entertainment.
It's great. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to mention too is like Wade Wells at Wild West for his exiting keynote talked as well a little bit about like the mental health was a large portion of it, but then also socialization and just the learning atmosphere. And that's one reason like why we do what we do with Study GRC, is so that way we could communicate and share as well. So also like I'll go ahead and grab the link for it too. There's a website where you can find like in-person meetups. Which is great learning experiences as well. And there's a lot that are free. So I'm going to drop that in chat here in a moment. I wanted to add that in there. And I see Dwight dropped a link on the chat over here. What was that?
That was security.ai. That was one of the ones I mentioned. In addition to OneTrust, if you want to get more knowledgeable for free about some of those privacy concerns, that link takes you to the one specifically about AI governance. So that's interesting. I'll probably be looking at that more. And if you look at OneTrust, pretty much all of the certifications they offer, I have them. So if you got questions about that, it's confusing. But if you want to go through any of those, I can probably give some advice or answer questions.
Yeah, and then we have this question here too from Brenda. Yeah, go ahead, Flickinator.
So one thing I was going to mention really quickly is Wired magazine has a podcast, Uncanny Valley. And since you mentioned AI, Dwight, they actually just did one, I just listened to it today, all about OpenAI and Sam. So it was actually pretty good, digging into him and do we trust him? And it was interesting. It might be worth just listening to. It's not like from a security cyber standpoint in the sense of getting you a job, but it's just interesting to hear the take on the thoughts of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and so Brenda's asking, is the privacy framework strategy only decided by privacy legal regulatory teams, or are more stakeholders involved? Did you want to take that CIPM?
It probably is going to depend a little bit on the company about who all is involved. Unfortunately, a lot of companies, and this is kind of who I was thinking about during the presentation, but a lot of times it is a value mill GRC or value mill privacy where there's only 1 or 2 people on the team, and you have these responsibilities, and you might have to get on the phone with somebody for legal. Maybe they only have like a attorney on retainer or something. Privacy may not even be their specialty. So it is definitely first and foremost a privacy legal sort of cybersecurity concern typically. But I think when you start talking about these bigger issues, talking about breaches and things like that, or even putting together like a incident response team, typically you're going to have people from sort of all over the company. I will say one thing I forgot to mention is that privacy does, unlike security, it does tend to have, because it is almost, or I should say not even almost, because it is pretty much align with ethics. If you don't have a sort of like ethics team, a lot of times the privacy team does have a lot of independence, I would say, from the rest of the company, so that they can sort of push back on things that they might see going wrong in a way that a security team might not. So in my opinion, I feel like as in some of these privacy roles, I might have a bigger impact than I might have as someone, especially not very senior on a cybersecurity or GRC team that's making decisions.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good answer. That explains why you passed.
Luckily, there were no verbal questions. It was all multiple choice, baby.
Until next time.
How long was the test again?
The test is double check on this on IAPP, but I think all the tests are about 90 minutes, and they're 90 questions long. You get a set of 45 questions. You have a chance to review those 45, and then when you go to the next set, you can't go back to the original 45, which kind of was annoying to me. I was used to being able to review the whole test, but was able to make it work, I guess.
So wait a minute. You get 90 minutes, and then you have to manage the 45 in review and then 45 in review?
You have to manage that on your own. A lot of these test centers, there's no clock on the wall, and you can't see, you can take them at home as well. But I usually go to a test center because, that's a whole risk assessment in itself, how rowdy my house is going to be trying to take a test. But so it's really difficult. I would say time management is difficult, but you have to kind of flag questions as you go is what I recommend. Even if you kind of know, but you just have a little bit of doubt in your brain, I would just flag it anyway. And then when I get to the end of that 45 questions, I go back and review only the ones that I flagged typically, and then go on to the second set. I felt so confident that I had passed the CIPP US that when I got to the end of the exam, I was like, oh, I'm done, I'm going home. And so when I got my score results, I was sure like there was a couple of categories that I could have done better in if I had just gone back and checked my answers. But I was just satisfied with the pass.
Right. Well, but if it's 90 and 90, you're flying at a minute a question. Wow. All right. Thanks for that.
They also have case study in there.
What?
They have case study questions too.
No.
They do one of these things. They'll do like a 3 or 4 paragraph case or whatever that you have to read, and then there might be 3 or 4 questions that apply to that particular case. So if you miss that, then you get to the end. So I think one of mine was about employment laws, and so I think I kind of got confused about that. But because they're chunked like that, they're such large chunks, when I go back at the end of the test to consider what I'm going to spend my time on reviewing, I didn't even second chance those. I was just like, no, I'm gonna send this baby in. I feel confident about the rest of the test. But that's how I got 100% on state privacy laws, but I think like 60% or something on employment laws, but because they were all bundled in those large scenarios, 3 paragraph scenarios.
So currently looking up what's a pass rate.
It was something I was worried about, because I did join some Facebook groups and things and people were posting their scores, and people were talking about failing the test. There were a lot of lawyers in the group who were really nervous about the test, and that made me a little bit paranoid. But when I sat down for the first exam and got through the first 10 questions, I kind of had a feeling like, oh, I'm going to pass this, and I'm going to sit for more exams, because I had taken Security Plus, I had taken C-Risk, and I was studying for the CISSP, and just compare it to the practice questions and everything I was doing, the questions were difficult, but they were straightforward. It wasn't like a lot of trickery and things like that. So I felt confident with IAPP. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, their exams are easy. Come get your privacy certs.
No, I get it. I get it.
When you're studying, for those crazy exams, it makes some of these other ones look more appealing.
I don't like the trickery, so thanks for the heads up on that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, they took a hint from CompTIA, I think. But one of my other questions would be, so you got the CIPP, and then you got the CIPM, so you got the management and the U.S. privacy one.
Yes.
What direction are you headed? So obviously you're really strong on the privacy aspect at this point. So what are your goals in the next 12 months?
I do see myself, maybe not in the next 12 months, but in the next 2 or 3 years, being in some sort of leadership position. So, of course, if you're thinking about CISSP as well, like that probably tells you that as well. But that, because I'm looking at some of those more senior roles, and experience is a big thing, but you also do have to have the raw knowledge. It's a bit of both in a lot of those job descriptions.
Yeah, I was kind of curious because I was just wondering what kind of value you saw in those particular certifications and where you planned on using it. So
yeah, for those particular roles, and mostly if you look up like privacy analysts, compliance analysts, those role, a lot of times they are calling out specific. I see CIPP called out, and often right next to it, it'll say, it would also be nice if you have the CISSP, which is hilarious to me, because these are not technical roles, but I think it does give you an idea that your recruiters are using it as a way to gauge the level of the candidate, and I rather, while I have time, I'd rather work on those now versus trying to get into. I think it's tough to get your foot in the door and then also be trying to be great at your job as well as studying for your next certification.
Okay, I have a question for you, Dwight. Are you able? Okay, first of all, are you interested in getting the CISP or CISSP?
Yes.
Are you currently studying, or have you ever studied for it?
I studied a lot for it this year. I did the FR Secure mentorship program.
Yeah.
And then I spent a couple months studying for it because I have a cousin who is ex-military that does a lot of consulting, and he wanted to get it, and I was like, okay, let's do this together.
Okay.
So, but in the end, when it started coming down to the timeline to take the test, I felt a little bit rushed, and so I kind of held off on it because I took the CompTIA Security X exam, and I was like, oh, this is a terrible exam. I'm not ready for the CISSP. That this exam was really difficult. Now I ended up passing it. I found it out later that I passed it, but I just thought it was really tough, and I was like, oh, I'm going to take a break. I'm really interested in this privacy stuff.
Right.
Let me sort of pursue that a little bit more wholeheartedly and put off this CISSP stuff. But I do intend to take a break from certs for a while, but pick back up on studying for maybe mid next year or later.
Okay. So knowing that, my question for you is this: are you able to compare the two at all at this point? The CIPP versus the CISSP. This is fun with the alphabet soup, by the way.
I feel like the practice questions and things that I was studying for was so much more intense and difficult, and it's such a broader range of things to know, like the knowledge that you need to know.
For the CISSP?
Or the CISSP.
Are you? Okay, yeah. Okay.
Are you trying to compare the IAPP certs with CISSP?
I
just wanted his opinion between the two. That's all.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's definitely more. I mean, I think in our field it's the most difficult exam, right?
Right.
But yeah, I think studying for that really gave me perspective. And then of course, like I sat down for the CRIS, the ISACA exam, and like the first 6 questions, I was like, oh, they tricked me. This is a setup. I'm gonna fail this exam. And then I hit like question 7 or 8. Yeah, that was like, yeah, they got all my money. I don't, because they're so expensive. And it wasn't until like question 8 that I got like, oh, I know this one. And then I got a couple more like that, whereas when I sat down for the IAPP questions, I wasn't ever intimidated like, oh, am I gonna finish this test in the time allotted? I didn't feel like that at all. There were some questions that I flagged and stuff, but definitely not as intimidating as even the practice test that I had done for CISSP.
Yeah, Space Talkers, when are you taking the CISSP? Everyone wants to know.
The CISSP is not necessarily on my radar to gain as a cert for my collection. I don't think I'd have a problem studying for it and getting a handle on some of the knowledge that's involved there. I guess my lead-up question, I guess my question for Dwight was sort of a lead into, do you feel the CIPP would be more valuable than the CISSP? Only because in my experience and my history of consuming cyber knowledge between videos and live streams and certs and podcasts and books and just all the things, I have heard some dissenting opinions about the CISSP. I've heard a few, not a lot, but I have heard, part of the minority of cyber brains that think the CISSP is a money grab, it's a cash grab, it's crap. And that's fine. They can think that. That's their opinion. That's totally fine. But I always like to hear people who are seriously considering it or people who have passed it. I'm always interested to hear what they think about it. And if it's as, the bee's knees as everyone says it is. And that's always just going to be based on their opinion, what they know about the test, and how they feel it helps them in their job. And Flakinator, I really don't think I'm taking the test. I have no problem studying for a cert that I'm not going to sit for, just to gain that knowledge.
Yeah, I got a lot of pushback about studying for it because people are like, you don't have that much experience. You got to do this and that. But I do think the exercise of really looking at all the knowledge you're supposed to have for some of these roles is really important. So yeah, even just studying for it is important. Also, it's a competitive job market. It's super competitive. Yeah. And then we talk about the DoD, and if government is in your future, if you're considering like GovTech and those types of roles, well, of course, if you pass it and you become an associate of the CISSP, that allows you to be eligible for some of those job levels as well, pretty much all the way across there, that DoD chart. So that was also another thing that had me considering. It's like, oh, am I going to be applying for some government roles? And so that was also why I was doing it, even though I know I don't necessarily have the full, I wouldn't meet the full experience requirement at the moment.
Right, that's fair. Okay, cool, thanks.
Yeah, I find it kind of interesting. Yeah, I've heard a lot of bad things from people regarding the CISSP as well. So I think it's a pretty split decision across the industry with everybody I've heard about it from.
Yeah, I think if you want it, do it. I mean, knock yourself out, but
especially if the company pays for it, might as well.
Yeah, that's the other part.
Well, exactly. Like, I mean, that's kind of like where I'm at. Like, I have no intentions on ever going with what is it? ICS2? I don't even remember the name.
Is it ICS2 or IC squared?
IC squared?
IC squared.
Oh, I think they changed it. I think they changed it to 2.
It's one of those. Sure.
Yeah, ISC squared or 2, whichever you want to call it. Just because I feel like the certifications are way more leaning on the technical side.
Yeah.
And just I don't want to just rack up memberships because like between ISACA and IAPP, I feel I'm already pretty well set as far as those certifications go for the industry I want to pursue. And I already struggle to keep up with the resources that are provided for the membership. So adding something on like ISC squared is just going to make it even worse for me to try to keep up with all the benefits that they provide. So I feel like, get my money's worth, unless of course, later on a company wants to pay for something. So just because of the annual dues and renewal costs and everything else, I prefer to keep it to the two. And it's on this topic too. I think this really closely relates. So I dropped a link here for CyberSeek. So let me move over to this. So cyberseek.org, they have a bunch of different statistics, all kinds of different information. I think it's really useful. But like you could see here, like CISSP, hopefully you guys can see that all right. It kind of gives you an idea for what type of positions that you might be looking at. So like none of this is set in stone. There's not really a standard for the industry, unfortunately, for job titles and descriptions. It would sure make it a lot easier if there was. But this I think is pretty useful because you also have, so you have the CISSP up here at the top, but then you also have, so we're looking at cybersecurity engineer, cybersecurity manager, cybersecurity consultant, and cybersecurity architect. We go down a little bit, and here's the CIPP, so Certified Information Privacy Professional. And it does share the cybersecurity consultant and the cybersecurity manager as well. And then if you double that with the CISM or one of these other combinations, you pretty much have the whole section lined up. Mm-hmm. So I just find that interesting because that's where I kind of look at. I think this gives you a little bit of an idea of where it might overlap a little bit. So it shares 2 out of 5 with the CISSP.
You put that in the chat?
So, yes, I did drop that in chat. I'll drop it again here.
What's it, CyberSeek?
Yep, cyberseek.org. And they have all kinds of different statistics on there. I think it's really good information. They have some other fancier things on here too, like skills and certification, because you could really break this down. Ooh, so then like if you want to go for IT auditor, it highlights out like some of the different ones for the industry and what actually shows up in job description.
What? Where?
Yeah, so like if you just highlight the center section here, so IT auditor, it's showing the skills on the right-hand side and the related certs on the left. And there's also like cybersecurity consultant. There's a lot of other sections on this website too. So they also have an interactive map. So like to give you guys an idea, so like I'm up in North Dakota, so I'm going to go ahead and click on North Dakota.
This is so fun.
And then this gives me all kinds of different statistics here for like the job market. So there's less than 2,000 cybersecurity workforce in North Dakota, and there's about 980 open positions. And it just gives you all kinds of information. About 472 Sec Plus people as well. And you could see that there's less than 10 people in the state of North Dakota with the CIPP. Less than 10.
What?
Yes. There's less than 10, which does not surprise me at all. But this gives you a really good idea for your area, because that's the hardest part when somebody's trying to enter is they don't know what they want to do or otherwise. But then, also you need to like look at what's available to you. So
yeah, fair.
And what they're asking for in your region, because it really is different. Because then like if we go to a hot spot like Texas, it's going to be completely different statistics. So.
Oh, okay. Less than 10 roles. I was thinking it was less than 10 people.
But that's certification holders.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Can you hit the openings? Just to compare the openings at the top where it says right next to certification holders. No, it's on that chart. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So 17 openings for the CIPP, for an example. And all of this is based on publicly available data on numerous different job posting websites and so forth. That's what I find useful with this. It gives you an idea for like what's getting hot or what is currently hot in the market and what they're looking for. So unfortunately, you cannot filter this by like entry level. So, but yeah, it definitely gives you an idea. And you can go through and you could even mark this down to federal, public sector, state level. You could even mark it down to like what industry. So
I've played on this website, but I mostly stayed on the map. I didn't look much at the other stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to take a look at chat here real quick. But this is a really awesome resource. And the way that I found this is through a website called Cybersecurity Central. And I'm going to go ahead and drop that in chat. So they have this really great page here. So cybersecuritycentral.org, I'll drop it in chat. They have this resource page, which is filled to the brim with all kinds of different resources. YouTube channels, books, personal branding, mental health and awareness, certification training. Lots of really great stuff on here. And that's where I found this. You could actually see it right here. So there's another one here as well. So the NICCS. So.
Wait a minute. I'm on Kimberly's page.
Yep. So if you go over to the resources by CC, then you go down to career pathways, and they have the NICCS and the CyberSeek right next to each other.
Sweet.
Yep. And then we'll be doing a deeper dive. So like the other day when I went live, I think that was Tuesday night, we had briefly touched on the NICE framework as well, which I think is a really good resource too. And we'll do a deeper dive on that in the near future. Did you ever look at any of this kind of stuff before you went for those certs, Dwight?
Sure did not.
You just were like, oh, I like this, let's do it.
No, I mean, I was interested in privacy, and that was I think I started there. I was just interested in it. I felt like I had an affinity for it. Maybe because of the nonprofit background, maybe because of, knowledge of HIPAA and stuff, that I just kind of had a curiosity about it.
Yeah, and I want to also call this out too. So McCoy, I think that's how you properly pronounce that. I'm not positive. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I actually met with him the other day, and so he's stating right here that he's having a rough time finding an actual GRC auditing role.
That's fair.
Yeah, great dude. I think he's doing awesome stuff. He definitely has a good roadmap together and doing what he needs to do and so forth. And I think it just comes down to like some of the stuff we've talked about before, tailoring, just focusing on some of the topics. There's so much information out there. But definitely keep him in mind if you guys come across anything. So he does come from a healthcare background.
Ooh, yay! Healthcare workers unite! Woohoo!
Yeah.
So McCoy, I put the link to my GRC Treasure Trove Discord in there. I do have a channel that has alternate ways to say GRC analyst. So you can look at that, see if any of those help at all. If not, let me know. I'll see if I can try and find something else.
Yeah. Yeah, and just leverage the community aspect. I know that he connected with me on LinkedIn, but you could also, I know you're in the Simply Cyber Discord. You could go through and like in the introduction portion channel, you could introduce yourself if you hadn't already and share your LinkedIn. There's also people have posted their LinkedIn all over the place in there. I think there's a Drop Your Socials channel or something. So. But I definitely wanted to like throw that out there that, I mean, honest, that he should not be having as rough time. Like it's the job market primarily. Yeah, and then also, so Davey, mentions 27 plus years of experience. Talking about how he feels the CISSP is a good way to stand out in the crowd. And like PBO's still studying for the CISSP as well, and he's got over 20 years.
Yep. I know another guy, same situation. He's got 20 plus years, and he took it once and was unsuccessful, and so he's studying for round 2.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember quite clearly offhand. I know that PBO has like 3 or 4 of the AWS certifications, but I don't think he has anything else on there. I think he might have grabbed the Sec Plus before. Or he failed the Sec Plus actually like back in 2005 or something and just never went back for it. Or something along those lines. But it's really surprising that he never actually got that CISSP prior.
Mm-hmm.
But for the job market, it's on everything, especially senior roles. Flycanator also says that is because entry level right now is asking for 5+ years of experience. Yeah, I personally think it's kind of hit and miss. So I think it kind of depends on where you are looking. I think that there is definitely an issue, and the market's not strong, I would say. But also, a lot of the people that I've seen get jobs recently, it was through networking.
I will say that is another thing that made me feel confident about IAPP. Like after I passed the first test, I joined one of the in-person events, and people were really friendly and welcoming. I mean, even to me as not a lawyer, I like walked in, I'm like, oh, I'm not dressed up enough for this event. But even all of that said, I felt like they were really welcoming, and people were like, oh, what roles are you looking for? And I started networking pretty much right away. So I'm definitely taking advantage of some of those resources.
Yeah, exactly. PBO's been 20+ years studying for that CISSP. And he'll get it. And this is exactly why I think that the CISSP holds so much value, is because people are scared of it. It's huge and people are scared. That's why I think it has industry recognition for being good, is my opinion.
It's good because it's scary?
Because it holds its reputation of being a intimidating test and the topics involved. That's kind of my take on it.
I like my version.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And then also Davey here again. So 20 years of IT, the Sec Plus and 2 degrees, having issues, finding a GRC role, finding any role can actually be a challenge. Oh, responding to Davey. Okay, I read that completely wrong. But yeah.
Chris, do you want to share some of your experience with this privacy stuff? Because I feel like you have been studying for that exam longer. Like, no.
Oh, really?
How did you first get interested in it?
Do tell.
And then maybe talk a little bit about the privacy stream thing, your perspective on that.
I mean, the whole privacy stream is your thing, really. I mean, come on, let's be honest. So I'm trying to get my thoughts together a little bit here, put on the spot. So I really do like the GRC aspect. And like I've said before is, I was positioning for blue teaming and then came across Simply Cyber, pushing towards GRC, got, ripped into the black hole of GRC. And, but there's so many different facets to GRC itself. And even underneath everything, there's so much more, and it just is ever expanding once you start digging into everything. The whole textbook that I ended up getting did not help with me figuring out and narrowing down to the specialties that I'm interested in. So everybody looks at GRC. Oh yeah. I got a whole college textbook that was just made earlier this year, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a great idea. Yeah. Next thing you know, I'm 12 hours into a rabbit hole all about company culture. So So like the privacy aspect really comes in because like everybody, I feel a lot of people go towards the audit side of GRC, and because that's what's popular, high demand. However, there's so much more to it, and also like I've talked to a lot of people who don't like to do the paperwork side of things. So policies and procedures, going through the paperwork. And when I started digging into that more, then I kind of came across the privacy aspect. And like even before I even got involved with pushing into the industry and getting into GRC, I have a whole stack pile of legal documents, for onboarding with companies and stuff that I would actually read through just for fun.
Nerd.
Yeah. So that's actually one of the things that draws me. I like GRC because it's at the top to an extent. Like what we do in GRC has an effect on the entire organization.
Yeah.
The company itself, the employees, and even the surrounding community we can have an effect on. And that's whether we do a good job or a bad job. And we may not have the actual control and power, but we could do our best to try to, put the company in a right spot. And that has a massive effect. And that's what I really like about the GRC side of it. And privacy is becoming hot for numerous different reasons all around the world. But it's also something that I just find interesting. So IT was always like a hobby of mine. And that was one of my interests with the IT side of it is privacy. So, utilizing Tor, VPNs, minimizing your data and so forth. So there's a lot of different stuff that goes into that. And then I just kind of looked around and I was like, oh, these positions are calling for the CIPP. What is that? And I just started going down the rabbit hole. Next thing you know, I have, expensive material and, a few hundred hours worth of stuff to go through. So, and I think that's like a really good part to also throw out there because like, the whole industry is just so broad. So you never have to necessarily settle on one thing. Like most of the people have jumped from one thing to another, done multiple different portions of it. So just because you're a SOC analyst doesn't mean you can't study GRC or, learn more about auditing, for an example, or whatever position type that you're in. If you're interested in something, go after it. So it makes it a hell of a lot easier.
Same is true in privacy as well. You see folks that only deal with cookies and consent management, so there are some specialties, but you do kind of have to know a little bit of everything. And then it's like when you get on the job, then you get into a specific, expertise or something.
But does that kind of answer the question there? I really just kind of, found my way down the rabbit hole and then picked a direction that, pulled me in. So
yeah.
I will say you sound like me a little bit in the whole, what is that? Because I did that for like a year and a half before I took Jerry's course. My God, there is so much.
Well, yeah. And like, I find it very interesting because there's a lot of different stuff that you could go in and there's some like really niche specialties.
Oh yeah.
But it gives you a very well-rounded perspective of it too. It's just like OSHA, for an example. Like the only reason I kind of dabbled in that is because like my brother got into a occupational safety role about a year and a half ago. Like when I was starting to dig into the information security professional side, and like me and him were like talking just like at lunch or something, and I'm like, oh, that sounds exactly like what we do with GRC. Like it's the same auditing protocol, it's just a different framework. So
cool.
Yeah. And that's a whole nother thing. Oh, look at that. We got Cheddar Bob. Welcome to the party, pal. But yeah, it makes it way easier. As I've talked about before too, I've done a various different types of positions, mostly on the labor side. And it's a lot easier when you find something that you just really enjoy. That's one reason why I feel like, finding the community and not burning out on it, been successful.
I actually kind of wanted to look at privacy and get a little bit more into that. But I was originally more compliance minded when I worked as a medical coder. I think I ultimately wanted to get into coding compliance. And I think it's a little hysterical that I was able to do it way faster coming into IT or GRC, because I have zero IT background, so I can't even call myself an IT person. So,
out of curiosity, did you work on your website?
what was I supposed to do to my website?
Well, we went through and did that whole roasting for your website last week.
You did? I remember that.
I think that was.
I did
Okay,
some
I
of
was
it.
curious.
No,
Okay,
it's fine. I just, old brain memory.
yeah, you're fine.
I took what did I do? I fixed some of it. You want to look? I gotta fix my resume though. I'm still working on my resume. I wasn't, and because of some of the suggestions, like say the project section down below, the template won't let me do that, so I had to tag each individual one as a project, and I'm supposed to be adding more, but I'm a slowpoke. What else was I supposed to do?
Well, and also you have that entire archive, which if you want to drop another link for that for your Discord, so the GRC audit treasure trove, which is like your entire collection, Wikipedia kind of thing.
Oh,
throughout your studies.
over there.
Bam.
Okay, I'm still working on my website though.
And then here's a question from Flakinator. So, are you antisocial, awkward, and like nerdy things? If so, you are automatically IT.
Okay, well, going off of those, sure.
I want to be offended, but it's like, oh, it's true.
It's like I want to be offended, but I feel seen. That's awesome.
Yeah, and then here's a link. So that Discord invite is for the GRC audit treasure trove.
Oh, I was just about to do it. Thanks, man.
Yeah, and B-dubs, if you do want to come up on stage, I can go ahead and do that. Just go ahead and confirm. So B-dubs was ended up going through and went to B-Sides Austin today, actually, where Chris ended up presenting.
Yeah, and Chris did a phenomenal job.
Chris? Who's Chris?
Hidalgo.
Yay!
Yes, I watched his ISO 27001 talk. Yeah. The same one he did for us on stream.
Awesome.
Yeah, here's the link to that manual. So we ended up converting his original document for a beginner's guide for the 27001 and put it into a Notion page that's freely accessible.
Yeah, and he did an absolute fire job with his talk.
Bam. I mean, he did a really good job a couple of weeks ago presenting for us the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know if they're ever going to release the recordings, or?
So unfortunately, besides Austin is not recorded, and it's a rule for all the talks. Like, they don't want you recording them at all. It is very.
That's a B-sides thing, I think.
DFW, we recorded them all and posted them up on YouTube. So it's not a B-sides thing.
All right, so that means that we have the exclusive footage of his presentation.
Incredibly exclusive. Yes.
Yeah, Study GRC is the one-stop shop for his presentation now. Just saying, throwing that out there.
Yeah.
So,
Study GRC is where it's at.
That's what's up.
That's what's up.
Yeah. If anybody has any questions or anything else that you guys want to talk about, definitely go through, drop that in chat, or I'll drop the link again. Everybody is welcome to come up here on stage. Did you want to mention any of your key takeaways from your adventure this week, B-dubs?
Stories.
Yeah, what are some of the highlights? I need some insider information here.
apparently Austin is like the hub for startup life.
Yeah.
There's a lot of tech startups here. It's been really interesting, talking and getting to know some of the vendors. I think my favorite is Ghost, not to be confused with Ghost CMS. They are a security company, and they coined the term today of ghosties. One of the founders coined that term today. So they have official ghosties. They're really cool people. Yeah. One to check out. For sure.
Ghosties?
Ghosties. Like Swifties, but ghosties.
That's literally what I thought of first.
Yeah.
And what do they do?
That's literally where it came from. I'll have to get back to you on that as
That's okay.
I'm in the mobile studio,
Yeah.
I love it.
But yeah, they're a and the reason I can't say is because I met so many awesome companies, and there's a lot of overlap in those, and they have a really cool car that's branded though with Ghost all over it. So
Great. Sounds fancy to me.
It's pretty fancy. Check them out on LinkedIn.
Fancy.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing about your debrief. So maybe we'll throw you up next week for a debrief.
I feel like I'm already being thrown up next week.
Exactly. So this is a perfect little cutaway here.
Whoa.
So B-Dubs. Yeah, so B-Dubs will also
Presenting
be
my first talk.
presenting.
Yay!
Yeah, we'll be presenting on Study GRC.
Yay!
Study GRC gets the exclusive first.
One-stop shop.
Bam.
One-stop shop.
So if you haven't heard already, I'm going to go ahead and drop this in chat as well. So
yay!
If I do the right commands. So B-Dubs ended up starting her own website, going through and doing articles every single Monday. And there's all kinds of great articles on there already. One of the big highlights for me, at least, is Step Out of the Shadow, Actionable Insights for Growth. The overall thing is Step Out of the Shadow, which was inspired by the Phantom CISO book. And, I just kind of coerced, forced to present for the community because I think it's so valuable.
And as a little
so that's
insight,
what we'll be looking at.
As a little insight, the shadow is your comfort zone. So it's getting outside your comfort zone, putting yourself out there for growth, whether that's in your career or personal life. It's applicable to everything. So, yeah.
Yep. So that's what we have forward. We can look forward to next week for our presentation. And I'll actually go ahead and. So I dropped the website, but I'll go ahead and drop the article as well if you guys want to get a head start on that portion. But there's a lot of really great information. And I think it's a really important topic. Oh, yeah. Let me go ahead and pull up the book, too. Right. Oh, you did? Okay, cool.
I did.
Bam. It's awesome when I don't have to grab all the links. Thank you. Well, that's a couple tabs less that I need. And one of the other things I was going to throw out there too, we were talking about like free resources and so forth. We also have the resource page for Study GRC, so you can find that through our website, studygrc.org. But that's the direct link because we moved that into Notion too for the resources. We're also constantly looking for what's working for you guys and if anything else should be added to that list. One of the big things that I want to get more of is we have a feeds channel in the Discord that I have a couple different things feeding into there. But if you guys have anything in particular that, blogs or podcasts that you guys follow in the GRC realm or that you feel would be a good fit there, then I definitely want to hear about that too so we could put it all in one spot. Yeah, and Flykinator just sent you a request on LinkedIn, B-Dubs.
Sweet. Yeah, fill me in on the chat. I can't watch the chat at the moment, but...
Mobile Studio.
Mobile Studio, very mobile. It will be accepted. Thanks for the connection. I love it.
Yeah, and also a moment ago, so Dwight was asking me about like my way towards the privacy side and why that was drawing me in, but then also another portion of that question that I just realized I didn't cover is the privacy stream. So The privacy stream itself, so that's every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Me and Dwight are working together on that project. So every week we're going through and doing a recording for that. It goes on air. And what our overall goal with that is to just share some of the different highlights, different things happening in the industry, to really try to get people to just think a little bit more about the stuff that's happening in the privacy realm itself, and how that also applies to practitioners and different people across different fields. So they are very short on purpose, which is something I'm really getting used to. We're coming up to our 2-hour mark now, but like last week I think was like 4 hours.
Yes, it was.
So doing a 15 or 20. Yeah, doing a 15 or 20-minute video is very abnormal for me. I feel like, you know, it's just not right. But we want to keep it short just to get more discussion about it and just get some of the information out there so we could start talking about it more and get people thinking about it. Because there's a lot of different stuff happening in the space, and it's growing very rapidly, and it's really hard to keep up with. So
currently you're getting...
Last week was Thanksgiving. 4 hours on a holiday.
Right?
I know.
It was fun.
They wouldn't let me leave.
And I was at people's house.
Yeah.
I was at my house.
Did you want to add anything on there, Dwight?
I was gonna say you should share about getting nerdy about dark patterns right now.
Oh, you want me to like throw out some hints on the next video?
So no, I just wanted you to say it's like we started talking about this issue. It's like, oh,
all right.
I kind of watched Chris go from, oh, that's interesting to like, whoa,
okay,
like what is happening here?
Oh. Yeah, and so I also have no problem saying it too. So like Fleckinator mentions that of you were avoiding family. So avoiding family and so forth. What do you mean? We're all family here. GRC Mafia.
GRC Mafia.
So really, exactly, GRC Mafia. Or avoiding family. So thankfully I'm in rural North Dakota, and the closest family to me is actually 4 hours away. So that's pretty easy in the wintertime. So I'm not done on purpose whatsoever, I promise. Now, as far as like getting nerdy with it and so forth, come on. Really? You're going to do me like that? I'm just thinking of the gif of, on Simpsons yelling nerd. So our last video did touch really a little bit about dark
GRC
patterns.
Mafia means.
Yeah, and so Dwight, what ended up happening is we're coming up with different various topics. We're doing the privacy stream in seasons. And so I did drop some of that information in the Discord itself, but I think we're going to be airing until, I think, like February or March. And then we're going to take about a month break off, and then we'll go in like 3-month periods is kind of what we're thinking with a series, doing it that way with seasons. So we're trying to plan everything out, and we're looking for community feedback on what you guys want to see as well. Dwight ended up sending me a FTC report regarding dark patterns. And then next thing I know, I'm watching a 6-hour workshop on it. And then after that, I start looking up the speakers, and I find out one of the speakers that they had for the FTC has an entire website, which you guys can see on the description of the next video, which is deceptive.design, which I'll drop in chat real quick too. And basically, long story short, I'm just down this huge, gigantic rabbit hole. I have a book ordered from this guy too, just because like the hole does not end on deceptive design. So it used to be called dark patterns. Now a different term for it is deceptive patterns or deceptive design, just so it doesn't have like a negative effect per se. Yeah, there you go. So Space Taco's already beat me to it. I'm gonna go ahead and turn that music down. That was pretty loud, I think. But yeah, so that's like what Dwight was talking about with like me getting like nerdy about it, because I just started down the rabbit hole, and next thing I know, I have a whole list of stuff I want to do with it. So if you look on that website, and this is giving a little bit more insight for this next week, it's just never ending. So you'll see on the types page, there's all of these different types of deceptive design. So we have confirm shaming, disguised
Hit
ads.
the example on confirm shaming. I posted that in Discord, but I think it's worth pointing out.
Yeah. So like confirm shaming here, you could see here on the pop-up if you want to, would you like to send notifications? And you either have the option to allow notifications from My Medic, or you could, no, I prefer to bleed to death. That is a form of confirm shaming. And
Very
so that's
clear
the kind
example.
of stuff yeah, and that's pretty extreme in my opinion, but there is far worse, and there's some that are like in between on the gray zone. But it is a big topic, and it's certainly something that people getting into and in the industry of information security should be much more well aware of. A lot of this overlaps. Like a lot of this will come second nature to a lot of people. Like in phishing emails, fake urgency. So there is a lot of overlap with this, of course, but it really breaks it down in depth. And yeah, I could talk the rest of the night about this for their 4-hour session. So, but definitely watch the one on Tuesday at 11 a.m. Or, it's recorded too. Are you happy with yourself, Dwight? Now you have me all excited about deceptive patterns and design now.
Yeah. I'm glad to share the madness with someone, so I appreciate you. But these topics just keep coming up. I think I already sent in a presentation draft to present about dark patterns at a conference, and part of that was starting that conversation with you. But yeah, there's just so many things out there. It's cool to be able to bounce ideas off of the community and really hear like, okay, do you guys want to go through the NIST privacy framework? Do we need to talk about that a little bit more in depth? Do we need to talk about GDPR? Do you guys want to sit down and see what it all is in the CCPA? Because if you're doing it on your own, it's pretty lonely, sleepy work. So it's great to have this community. So yeah, thanks y'all, and keep letting us know what you want to hear about.
Yeah, it's just like McCoy adds here is, we're all mad here. Them rabbit holes will get you. Well, and I think that's what makes it so easy is it's just like the privacy side. It's so much easier to study and learn because it's something that I enjoy doing. It's not for everybody, but I mean, all of us, I don't think would be doing this if you haven't found something you enjoy that you're studying or working with. So, and if you haven't, you probably should look around or figure that part out. But let's talk NIST. Let's talk about GRC.
I'm starting a song.
Oh, are you? Okay. I was going to say, we also still have to record the audio for our soundtrack. So that could be another one. Like I can make a soundtrack for, let's talk GRC or let's talk NIST. A saxophone playing in the background, and I'll just say NIST.
No saxophone.
I think that's my cue to go.
No saxophone.
It's been real, y'all.
See you later.
Yeah, if you got to go, I'll talk to you later.
See y'all. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly, Cheddar. Yeah, you heard that in your head. I didn't even have it close up to the mic yet.
Oh, no.
And then you guys wonder why I haven't done the soundboard yet. So I'll go ahead and drop this link one more time. I think there was somebody else in the backstage there. But I think they just dropped out of there. So if you guys have any other questions or otherwise, go ahead and pop up on stage or drop that in chat. I'll stay on for a few more minutes here. And we do this every single Thursday. So every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Central. And then also we have that privacy stream on Tuesdays.
Chris.
Yes.
Did you make the GRC Mafia shirt? Is that going to become a thing?
So let me go ahead and pop this up. So I did not make the GRC Mafia t-shirt. I would say that I inspired the t-shirt. So I threw around a couple different designs, and I believe Kimberly Can Fix It is the one who finalized it or got that finished. However, I do actually have that ordered out, which is why I dropped that earlier. So I'll go ahead and pull up this tab. So on the merch site for Simply Cyber, they have a 25% off everything plus free shipping. So what that basically means is like a lot of these t-shirts are like 20 bucks or less now, and they recently released these GRC Mafia swag. So you can get a GRC Mafia t-shirt or the mug. One of the really cool things with this, and like what I ordered earlier, is you can go through and you could customize this, and it might still be in here. So like I'll actually pop this open here. So customize up in the top left, and then you could change the product itself. Let's see. So like I'm going to go back to the mug. So I selected the mug itself, and then I actually deleted the design there. I went ahead and swapped to the right side. And then if you open up designs here, you can go ahead and add whichever design you want, because there's the preloaded ones in here. But then you can also add these other ones too. So then you can customize your swag that you get from the Simply Cyber merch shop.
Yeah, okay.
So now you have a custom mug.
I like it.
That nobody else has, because you customized what designs are on it and where they're located. I think somebody just popped in here. Maybe. Okay, hold on. Oh. Just double checking it all.
Cool.
So the privacy stream is at 11 a.m. Central Time. So if you take a look at our YouTube channel, I'll go ahead and drop the link to the next one. But it's every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Central.
Ooh, maybe I can go to it, because that's my lunchtime.
Bam. And it's only about 15 to 20 minutes. So we're trying to keep all of them to 20 minutes or less.
Cool.
Just to get the conversation started and going and throw some info out there. But then we put all of the links in the description to so that you could really dig in deep. But so this is a nice little rundown here, and then let me go ahead and like, let's say if I wanted to go through and do that,
I like it.
I'll go ahead and add that to my cart.
Christmas present for me.
And so the standard price for this is $22.48 for this single mug. Now, if you go ahead and redeem, it's knocked down all the way to $13.49 with free shipping. So if you're going to get something, now would be the time to get it.
I think I'll do that. Thanks.
Yeah, that's what I did. Is I went ahead and stocked up, so that way, you know, I get this this thing. And Simply Cyber does not control the discounts. So this is something that goes through. I think it's like Teespring or I don't even remember which company it's through.
Something like
offhand. Yeah. So spreadshirt.com is who it's actually through. So it's all through them. So he doesn't even have any control over the discounts. But that's like one of the biggest ones that we've seen so far. Yeah, and thank you, Regine. So yeah, we're definitely looking for feedback and anything else that you guys want to talk about as well. We did kind of contemplate on like doing like a privacy 101 to start with, but we figured just jumping right into the topics would be a really good start, and then we could kind of cover things as we go along. But it will be season based, so throughout the year we'll have a total of about three to 4 months off, and the rest of the time they'll be dropping every week. I'll go ahead and pull that out. All right, so one of the perks of my current job is that I get free Udemy courses. Does anyone have any suggestions? So yeah, I'm sure. So I have a short list for Udemy. I'm not a personal fan of it, but I know a lot of people who love Udemy.
I do.
So yeah, and I'm sure you have a lot in your Discord too for Udemy.
Actually, no, they're all in my Udemy. I'll work on that.
Sounds like a plan.
Yep.
Oh, and Cheddar Bob ended up popping into the Discord. Woo. GRC Mafia.
Woohoo!
Posts great stuff on X.
Sweet.
Funny stuff. So, all right. Yep, I'll see you later, Flakinator. Yeah, I think we're going to go ahead and kill it here in a moment. So if you guys have any other topics or questions or otherwise, go ahead and drop that. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. And then I'll see you guys on Tuesday and then again on Thursday. And those Udemy ones, I'll go ahead and put like a list in this Study GRC Discord, because there's a few that I do have saved.
Okay. I don't have a lot of GRC Udemy content because I was focused on something totally different. So that's probably why I really couldn't answer your question.
Oh yeah, no issues. There's a lot of stuff that's on there though.
Yep.
All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and end it here. Thank you all for joining in, and I will see you guys next week. You guys have a great rest of your week and enjoy your weekend. I'll see you guys in Discord.
Thanks, Chris. Have a good night.